Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Thought I'd come to you and take your questions and give you any answers you need. Okay, so a couple of things to talk about. Obviously, this week has been notable because of the passing of the Big Beautiful Bill, Trump's Big Beautiful Reconciliation Bill. This is a budgetary process that happens in the USA government. They're setting the budget basically for the next 10 years. And there's special rules about that budgetary process, the reconciliation bill, that made it a little bit easier for some legislation to be squeezed into that bill. There's a big incentive for them to do that. Now, the Republicans have done a lot of damage in this particular Big Beautiful Bill. It's not very beautiful. It's kind of stupid as hell. But notably, the part that affects TV lottery is not a problem. We don't have to fear the $250 entry fee that was suggested, or the $400 to fill out a DS-260. Those things are not in the bill. They were taken out of the bill because they were not strictly to do with the budgetary impact, and so needed to be voted in a different way. Now, there is someone trying to pass that sort of legislation, so I'm not saying that legislation can't come back to the table, but it's extremely unlikely to be voted on and approved in other formats that they make that sort of change. Very, very unlikely indeed. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's take some questions. Second draw, looking at all likely. This is too early to be asking this question. You're talking about DV 2026, I guess, right? And the thing that makes a second draw possible or likely or not is the number of selectees they've chosen in the first draw, okay? If they've taken more than 100,000 people in the first draw, there won't be a second draw. If they've taken, let's say, only 80 or 85,000 people in the first draw, then there could be a second draw, okay? Now, we don't know how many people have been selected in DV 2026. We don't have that number yet. So for someone to make a guess about whether there is likely to be a second draw or not is kind of foolish. And I'm no fool. So no, I'm not even going to make a guess about that. I don't know what will happen. The one thing I can say is that there may be a limited second draw in South America. The reason for that is because of my lawsuit, funnily enough. I obtained evidence, and I've presented evidence in the lawsuit against the government, which shows that Cuban selectees are in DV 2026. They should not be in DV 2026, and they're ineligible for that year. And so, if you know, it's a sad thing, but any Cubans that feel they have won the DV 2026 because you entered, despite the fact that the country should have been ineligible, you may have been selected, but you can't possibly be approved. And my lawsuit with regard to the UK entries presented as evidence Cuban selectees being selected in DV26 because it shows that the government screwed the process up in both 2025 and 2026. They forgot to turn on the UK in 2025, and then in 2026 they forgot to turn off Cuba. It's very obvious what they did. There's a switch, right, for each country, and they didn't do the bloody switches correctly. So it's obvious how they've made the mistake that affects the UK, but the Cuba evidence is telling and helpful from the UK point of view. I haven't disadvantaged any Cuban selectees in DV 2026. You're ineligible for DV 26 anyway, so you would have been refused at interview, and you would have spent money. So actually, you know, it's kind of doing you a favor to stop you. You're also under the travel ban, and that's another reason. But even if that travel ban reason disappears, you're still not eligible to be in DV 26 if you're chargeable to Cuba. So those Cuban selectees will come out. Now, how many Cuban selectees are there? I don't know. We don't know that until we get the official selectees numbers. But if there's a substantial number, then that could impact South America, and it would mean that South America numbers would go much faster than we would normally expect, and it may even cause them to do a second draw, because they would be trying to draw non-Cuban participants. Okay, so we'll see what happens there. Tuned in, how are you today? I'm very good, thanks, Raguti. Very good. Any hope for case number AF 65,000 fiscal year 2026? Too early to tell. It doesn't sound like a bad number. We know that case numbers go over 100,000, but again, we don't know how many people are selected in DV 2026. Now, with the travel bans in place, it's very likely that high case numbers will get more of a chance from non-banned countries in the regions affected. That's in Africa, Asia, and to some extent Europe, right? The travel bans will not slow down scheduling. This is actually something I want to talk on in a minute, but cases can still be scheduled, they can still be interviewed, but they obviously won't be issued. And so you know, that the impact of the travel bans, for as long as the travel bans remains, you know, could be impactful for Africa, but we just don't know that. I can't see that. I don't know how many selectees there are. I don't know whether the bans will continue or not. It's an impossible year to be guessing, and certainly at this point it's impossible. Let me just quickly touch on that other point I was about to mention. For DV 2025 candidates that are under a travel ban, please don't waste your time in going to the interview. I know some of you are confused. Some of you, particularly from countries such as Afghanistan or Iran. I think Iranians are used to being kicked, frankly, so they understand what it means to be kicked, and they understand, you know, they understand that their chances have disappeared. Okay. But Afghans seem to be sort of less believing of the reality. And so I've had a number of Afghans and other countrymen too that have come to me and said, hey, I've been scheduled for an interview, even though my country is under a travel ban. It must be because they want to give me a national interest exception. It's not that. It's not that at all. Please don't think it's that. You'll be wasting your time. And more importantly, you'll be wasting your money if you go to the interview. If you're under a travel ban, you are banned. Okay. They wanted to ban you. It's not because they don't like you personally. They're just trying to make a political statement. And, you know, if you believe Trump, if you believe Trump, you're a moron. But if you believe Trump, it's about security or some bullshit, right? But the reality is that the travel ban is effective, and it's causing cases to be denied at interview, and there's no way around it by a national interest exception. It just doesn't exist. You know, the thing is, some of you think, you know, I shouldn't smile on this because it's very sad, but some of you naively think that if you can show you're a very nice person and that you've always liked America, and that you've got family in America, and you're a dentist, or whatever is your situation, you think that that makes you eligible for an NIE, a national interest exception. It doesn't, because whatever story you've come up with is not in the national interest of America. Okay, we don't need more people who are very nice people from Afghanistan or Yemen or Iran or whatever. We don't need them according to the government, right? They tried to ban you. They want to ban you. They have banned you. Okay. And it doesn't matter how much you can show that you know the Star Spangled Banner or whatever other evidence that you want to show that you actually would make a very good American. And I'm sure you would make a very good American, but that's not the point. They're not gonna give you a chance. And it's as simple as that. So unless you've got a second nationality and a second passport, and you can travel on that passport, and that second nationality and passport is legitimate, not bullshit, not made up, not obtained through fraud, none of this nonsense about I was born twice in two different countries and that's why I'm eligible for an Ethiopian passport or whatever the hell some of you have been telling me. None of that bullshit, right? What I'm saying is, if you've got a second nationality and you have a passport for that nationality, let's say you're Iranian, but you've become a Canadian citizen, your eligibility is through Iran, sure, but you have to travel on your Canadian passport. Canada, funnily enough, isn't eligible for the lottery, right? But nevertheless, you can travel on your Canadian passport as an Iranian selectee. It's just the nuances of the process allow you to do that, and that would get you around the ban. That's it. That's the process. Okay. Other than that, please don't attend your interviews over the next couple of months. You'll be wasting your time and money, which is, it's bad enough that you've been banned, but the double whammy of you've been banned and then you spend all your money on the medicals and the interview and everything else, or traveling to the interview, that's, please, that's totally avoidable. You don't need to do that. You just have to accept what's happened. Okay. Prediction for Asia and Nepal upcoming VB. Asia can't possibly fill its quota right now. In general, the regions are really low. If any of you are worried about visas running out, forget about it. The government have made sure through stupidity that they're not going to run out of visas. I'll show you what I mean. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Right, let's have a look at this for a second together. This is the latest data as of yesterday. So we can have a look at these numbers and just take a look at this, right? So right now, and I'm not just going to focus on Asia, I'll focus on the whole process. But right now, 33,000, this is GV25, right? Yeah, 33,388 visas have been issued. Let me just make sure I've not moved the time bar. Yeah, I haven't. Good. Okay, 33,388, and 179 other visas will be issued in the next few days. This AP column basically means you're in the visa printing processes. They're going to become issued. So call that 33,500, right? There are cases in 221G, 3,300 cases in 221G. Many of those can't go ahead because they've been travel banned, right? So there's a lot of Iranians in there, some Afghans, some Yemenis, and so on. And many of those 3,300 people are not going to be able to get approved. They will just be left in 221G. They might switch to refused, but permanently refused. But they can't get it. So I'm only expecting about 1,000, maybe 1,500 people from that group to make it into the issued column, right? So let's say between these 33,500, let's take it generously. I mean, and this is pretty generous. Let's say 1,500 more get added in from people currently in 221G. And as I say, I believe that's generous. That would give us 35,000 visas issued so far, right? Then you say, yeah, but there's 15,600 people in ready status lined up for their interviews. No, they're not. Over 5,600 of those, in fact, nearly 6,000 of those are no-shows from previous months. Okay, if you look at the number of people actually scheduled for interviews in July and August, it's about 9,800 people, roughly, I think. Roughly about 9,800. So there's just under 10,000 people who are truly about to interview. The other 5,000 or 6,000 from that ready status column are people who had interviews in previous months and didn't turn up, and they're probably never going to turn up, right? Some of them will. Some of them will have missed their interview for genuine reasons. They contact the embassy, and the embassy says, "Yeah, sure, we'll rearrange that for you." But in general, no-shows tend to happen every year. There's always no-shows, and they're just people that get their appointment scheduled, and for whatever reason, they don't know about their interview, or they've realized that they're not going to qualify, they don't have the fees, or whatever it might be, they don't go to the interview. Okay, that's no-shows. So there's only 9,800 people who are actually going to interview in July and August so far scheduled. And those people aren't all going to be approved. Some of those are travel banned. Some of them will no-show. Some of them will be travel banned. Some of them will be refused. And some will go into 221G. And some will be issued, right? But let's say 8,000 of those get issued. And let's add those 8,000. And that's really optimistic. I mean, it's more likely to be something like 7,000 from that number. But let's say 8,000. I'm just going to be optimistic in all these versions, right? So we've got 35,000 people that could be issued from the already issued and from the 221G, and let's add in 8,000. to be really generous and say, okay, we're at 43,000 before we go into the final month, right? There are 52,000 visas available. That means that if we take out 1,000 for AOS, there's about 8,000 visas that are going to be left in for September interviews, right? Now, there's no way in the world they're going to schedule enough people to issue 8,000 visas in September. It's just not going to happen, right? I'll show you why, actually. I'll show you while I'm on this subject. This is kind of interesting. Let me show you why. The why is because they have not scheduled fast enough. So if we look at DV24 number of interviews scheduled by month and compare that with DV25, we can see that in general, for example, in Africa, for the month of June interviews, there were 1,700 interviews arranged for DV24. In DV25, only 1,382. This is a bit small, isn't it? Let me make this bigger. Make it a lot bigger. Right. So yeah, you can see that now, right? So 1,382 for June interviews. For July, so they lost what? They lost about 300 interviews for June. If you compare to July, in DV24 they had 1,800. This is Africa, 1,816, and this year 1,481, right, in DV25. So they lost another 300 cases then. For August interviews, they scheduled 1,874 in DV24, 788. They lost 1,000 in that month. So they've lost 1,600 interview slots in 3 months in Africa. All right, 1,600 is just under 3,000 people. Right, so that they've wasted the opportunity, they've wasted capacity, they've gone too slow. If we look at Asia, Asia is similarly sort of being underutilized. Not so bad, not as bad as Africa, but underutilized in that month, overutilized there, and about the same there, right? But in Asia, a lot of those cases that are scheduled are already banned, right? So a lot of those people are not going to be approved. If we look at Europe, Europe had 753 for June, 1,010 for July, and 897 for August, right? Look at the numbers. They've wasted opportunity quite a bit there. They've wasted, what, 150 in June. They wasted 350 in July, and they've wasted sort of 60 or so in August. Not a bad month in August, but not as good as it should have been. And again, some of those are travel banned, right? So are they going to catch up? Well, they have to get to these sort of numbers. They have to be scheduling sort of 1,000 and 1,000 for Europe and 1,800, 2,000 for Africa. They're not going to do it. And even if they did that, let's say, so they did 2,450 interviews for the month of August. And we're pretty much done. We can pretty much say now there's not going to be any more interviews arranged for August. So, you know, the visa bulletin will probably be released this week, and that's the end of August interviews in a sense. And so under 2,500 interviews, if they wanted to schedule, let's say, 8,000 people for the month of September, they'd have to do 4,000 interviews globally. And if they schedule 8,000, they don't get 8,000 approved visas from 8,000 interviews. They yield probably about 5,000, 5,500, something like that, because of travel bans, no-shows, 221G, and so on. Okay, so the reality is they are underfilling almost. I mean, well, it's not almost guaranteed. It is guaranteed that they are underfilling this year. It's just a mathematical certainty. Now, what do they do to combat that? Is there anything they can do to combat that? Well, they could try. They will. Thank you. They will try and use all the available capacity in the embassies. I believe they will do that. Right now, let me just be clear. I'm not making predictions about what will happen in the final month of visa bulletin because I don't really know what's in their head. They might be saying, we're going to underfill this year. We don't care. Right? That's fine. Trump doesn't like immigrants anyway. You know, we don't want to be too busy. The embassies are kind of busy. They got a party to go to. I don't know what bullshit they're going to come up with in their heads, right? But they might be saying to themselves they're happy to underfill. And if they underfill, meaning they don't give away all the visas, nobody gets in trouble. Not KCC, not the embassies, no one, right? It's fine for them to lower the amount of work they do on DV lottery. They are allowed to do that. There is no rule or law that says they have to issue all the visas. Now, in DV 2020 and DV 2021, we kind of pushed them to the point where they were told by a judge, yeah, actually, you have to do your job. You have to issue as many visas. You have to give it your best faith effort to issue as many visas as possible. And as a result of those lawsuits in DV 22 and DV 23, the government went mad trying to issue visas to the extent where they actually broke the law and overissued visas. Right? They were so sort of hit, if you like, or scared of the lawsuits in DV 2020 and 2021 that they sort of overcompensated. They went the other way. Then in DV24, they returned to somewhat to normalcy, where they went towards the target but didn't hit the target, didn't go over the target. And so what will they do in DV25? Maybe they return to the days when they underfill. Remember, out of the last 25 years of DV lottery, they have overfilled twice, maybe 3 times. I'm not even sure about the 3 times, but definitely twice. They've overfilled twice, right? So out of 25 years, twice they've overfilled as a reaction to the lawsuits that we put together in DV 2021. And the norm in most years has been to underfill by several thousand, okay? They normally waste several thousand visas. So they could easily do that. They don't have to have a final sort of Hail Mary, as I call it. But if they want to have plausible deniability about what a shitty job they've done this year, then what they should do is go as far as they can with interviews, right? They should try and schedule about 4,000 interviews, which means they've got to increase the visa bulletin a lot, particularly in Africa. But Africa, Europe, Asia, they should all be increased quite a lot. Oceania and South America also should get a little bit of an increase. Whenever a region underfills badly, its unused visas sort of are distributed to the other regions. Now, in this year, all the regions are going to underfill. And so there should be some distribution of spare visas to other regions. So if there's a lot of Oceania applicants that still want to have their visa, for example, they should be able to get them. Now, I'm not saying they will do that. I'm saying that they could do that, and they could justify doing that. Okay, so you're back to your question that started that explanation. Prediction for Asia and Nepal upcoming VB. I expect Nepal to get pretty much to its highest numbers, which is about 11,500, I think. And I expect Asia to be pushed maybe to, well, math. So, I always think about the math, but actually the math doesn't really matter in the final month. They could max out the visa bulletin numbers and let embassy capacity be the decider about who gets interviewed. And that's what they did last year. And so it wouldn't at all surprise me if they do the same thing again this year. Okay. So hope that explains. Hello, Simon. Phoenix, waiting impatiently for new VB Warsaw 27.5. Hopefully the numbers will catch capacity to allow to have ourselves scheduled. Yeah, fingers crossed for you. Yeah, you'll need a slightly heroic performance. But yeah, good luck. My interview not attended and successfully rescheduled. Now got unbanned passport. What is your thought on tips, boss? As I already explained, lucky boy, as long as you've not obtained some stupid passport on the basis of being born a second time, please don't come at me with that bullshit. If you're telling me you've got 2 passports and they've got different place of birth on the 2 passports, honestly, there's no need to have that conversation with me. There is no technical way that I've ever heard of where a mother can give birth in 2 different cities to the same person, to the same baby, right? I don't know how that happens. Do they whip it out, open her up, put it back in, have another go for fun? I've never heard of that. So I don't think it's really a true thing. So whenever I hear of someone who says, yeah, I got 2 passports, showing that I was born in 2 different cities, and those 2 different cities are in 2 different countries, and that's how I was able to get a second nationality. If I hear that nonsense from one more person, I'm going to lose my mind, because that is obviously bullshit, and that's the very definition of fraudulent documents and immigration fraud. And I'm just going to laugh at you, okay, if I don't lose my mind. But so, lucky boy, please don't tell me you've done that. But if you truly got a second nationality and you've got a passport for that, then great. Tips is just tell the truth. Don't turn up at the freaking interview if you're lying. But if you can go into the interview and tell the truth in all matters, then great, go for it. Hello, sir. Fingers crossed for you to become current this week. Yeah, fingers crossed. I don't know about current, but yeah, I'd like it. Any lawsuit for DV25? For what? Fabrice, for what? What lawsuit? I am suing for the UK entries, yes. But what would the other lawsuits be for? Because you're not happy? Like, that's not really a thing. Do you think the high case number of South America is going to go up to 3,000 because of the travel ban and the underissuance by the memento or reassigned quota of AF? Yeah. So Matthias, I just explained all of that. Yeah, it's a possibility. The numbers could go higher because of the travel ban, because of the underissuance, as you quite rightly say. So yeah, it might happen. I'm just not saying it will happen. I don't know. I'm just explaining the conditions exist for a Hail Mary, for a final dramatic increase in various regions, perhaps all regions. Okay, the conditions do exist for that. Whether that's what they do or not, I don't know. Any hope for a restricted country for DV26? Do you mean travel ban? If the travel ban is in place, there's no hope unless you have a second passport. Okay, other than that, you know, if you want to believe in fairies and you want to believe that the consular officer has discretion to give you a national interest exception, please don't do that. But if you really want to believe that, then it's your money and time to waste. Okay. Honest answer. Any chance for Algiers DV25 57K? I can't say no to that. I can't say no to any of these right now. So when you say, is there any chance? My answer has to be yes, but only because, you know, even if mathematically that seems like a low chance of happening, you know, I don't know what they'll do. They might just sort of push the boat out. I don't know. Philip, good morning to you. Maybe the last live before I'm current or not. No, before you're current. Exciting times. I'm at church, cannot hear you, but we'll watch where later. Hail Mary. That's yeah, exactly. Thank you, Philip. I hope you're having a great day in church. Yeah. Have you been to church, by the way? Have you been to church in America? Like, it's unbelievable. Some of the sort of particular southern churches. I mean, there's some amazing churches, wonderful churches here. But some of the churches you go to, it's like a Hollywood show. You'll listen to this later, Philip. But I've been to churches, and I'm an atheist, but I've been to churches, you know, with friends and that sort of thing, being supportive, enjoying the atmosphere. And I remember a number of years ago in Fort Lauderdale being all, you know, sort of semi-regular. I went there a number of times to a church in Fort Lauderdale, massive church, where they had a choir of maybe 200 or 300 people who were raised above the congregation. The congregation, I mean, it's thousands of people in this church, thousands, enormous. And, you know, they had the choir raised and they had a big sort of stage and they had various levels. And so people that were going through to get to be baptized were sort of higher in the air in this sort of, you know, special area where they could be dunked, baptized in the holy water, and move through. I mean, it was like a Hollywood show. I'm not kidding you. It was unbelievable. Lighting, music. It was amazing. Great way to spend a Sunday morning, even if you're an atheist. Yeah, you know, good fun. Do you expect the high jump? Yeah, just talked about that. 18K, AS 26K, DV26. Sorry, 18K, DV26 after ban. We'll have to see. Well, I don't know what you mean after ban. Don't know. Any lawsuit, DV25, recent travel ban. Oh, okay, we'll go to right. So I do know that Curtis had some lawsuits going. One of them was, I think, for Iranians. Curtis should probably explain this himself, but it was a sort of a delay, an unreasonable delay lawsuit for a bunch of Iranians. I think 58 Iranians or something, or 58 Iranian families. I'm not sure which. And obviously, that unreasonable delay became impacted by the travel ban that was put in place. And so Curtis, I think, has had to switch tacks a little bit and add the travel ban into some aspect of what he's attacking. I don't know what his strategy is for attacking the travel ban, but his problems, or the problems of those applicants, was exacerbated by being unreasonably delayed and then delayed to the point in which they were travel banned. So that does seem unreasonable, absolutely unfair. And perhaps that's the sort of argument that Curtis is trying to make. So I don't know. If your grandmother ethnically from Unbanned Country and got a new passport through that, is that a problem? I don't know, Lucky Boy. I don't know what the rules are in that country you're talking about. I don't know what country you're talking about. So, okay. What is your faith for DV25? You have to wait and see. Is Africa 54K? Is it a safe number? Yeah, almost certainly. Hi, Simon. I think I speak for all your followers. We'd love to see Zarthisius join you live one day. But until then, could you share a little bit about who is the brilliant man behind the shadow? Oh, dear. That's an interesting and fun question. I think Zarthisius is one of those people that kind of likes the anonymous side, right? He is more than welcome to join me anytime. As is other people that that I know and speak to all the time. I'd love to see Zarthisius on here, but he's got a fairly unique and direct sense of humor. He's even more blunt than I am, I think, in a lot of cases. If he thinks you're being an idiot, he's going to tell you you're being an idiot without a doubt. I probably am going to tell you you're being an idiot, but he will 100%, and he'll, So he's pretty blunt. What can I tell you about him? He's a software engineer, obviously. He lives outside of he's not in a big city. He lives in the northeast, I would say. I think he's probably one day going to move to a more logical place to live. But yeah, obviously, nice guy. He is a previous DV lottery recipient himself. I don't know whether he won or his wife won. I think it was his wife. But yes, he's been doing what he does for some time because he's giving back. He's a nice guy. He pays for some of the costs of this whole process, that he puts out the data himself. He's funded that for several years. I've helped him a couple of times with a few pennies here and there, really. But he's paid all of this money himself. He doesn't expect anything at all from it. So super nice guy, and smart guy. And, so I appreciate him. And yes, I would have him on live anytime to talk. That would be kind of fun. So thank you for suggesting that, Cielo. I'll speak to him. Hi, Simon. DV25 Yerevan. What are my chances? I don't know. Difficult, probably. Sank. Hi, boss. Is case number EU273 safe for the EU region DV25? What's your prediction? I don't know. Don't know, Sank. I've just explained why I think they could have a big jump, but I don't know 100% that they will. Right. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. I did. It was awesome. I did not enjoy my travel. My flights were freaking horrendous, but the time I was there with my family, it was wonderful. Very nice. Las Palmas in Gran Canaria is where I was. Okay. I hope you enjoyed your vacation. Any hope for DV20 for 25 AF23K in Casablanca's embassy? So really, what you're asking is Casablanca going to get off their ass and schedule people? I hope so. I truly hope so. Something that could happen, by the way, and I'm going to talk about Casablanca and Frankfurt and Nairobi and all of these embassies. I don't know what they're going to do for the final month. One thing they could do is they could take a very high number of selectees and then move some of those cases into August interviews. So although people have been disappointed in, for example, Frankfurt not taking any interviews for August, and it looks like they're not going to, what we might see is a very high number scheduled for September, and some of those September interviews actually will get moved into August, either by the embassy or by KCC automatically. That can happen, has happened before. So, it's a possibility. Will Morocco do that? Casablanca? Will Frankfurt do that? Will Nairobi do that? I don't know. I have no information to suggest one way or the other. I just hope that they get off their asses. Okay. Hi, Simon. Somaliland is an unrecognized country that's separated from Somalia. Its passport can also be used to travel to the USA. If Somalia is placed under the travel ban, will it affect Somaliland too? Yes, because you nailed it in the first few words. Somaliland is an unrecognized country. It's not recognized by the USA. And so, even though documentation is accepted from that region, that's only a region, and it's a region of an existing country. So if Somalia were to be banned, Somaliland would be banned too, until it can actually achieve recognition by the USA. Okay. My expectations for Asia 2026 after banning countries. Don't know. Too early to say, right? For all the reasons I've explained. I'm finally in Los Angeles. Landed yesterday and play for my SSM within a week. That would be... It rarely comes within a week. It's usually 2 to 3 weeks. I've been seeing green cards come through in about 4 to 5 weeks recently. That's kind of cool. But everybody's case will be a little bit different. Thank you very much for every advice, every answer, and guidance. You are the king. I'm not really the king. We don't have any kings in the USA. But I appreciate your kind support, Adamu. That's a lovely name. Good luck in LA. Hi, Simon. Does the Big Beautiful Bill for any opportunity for winner DV Lottery 2025 form countries previously under travel ban? Nothing about the bill has done anything to help anybody for a DV Lottery. The only thing that the Big Beautiful Bill did for DV Lottery was not add those charges that were previously planned. Okay, they were taken out before the bill was passed. Okay. Tony says, good afternoon, please. I want you to please help me. Check on the embassy in China, Guz, if I'm possible to have an interview case number AF54K. Look, Tony, I've explained many, many times how to assess interview possibilities and embassy performance and so on. You can have a look at that yourself, okay? I would say that, just as a rough guess, China is not a very busy embassy, and so it's the type that has possibilities to take some quite high case numbers if they become current. And your number should become current. But, please have a look at the many times, including a specific video that I created that explain how to assess embassy performance rather than asking me to do it all the time. Okay. M. Yasser Fawad. I'm number 3000, 2026 Africa, and didn't submit the DS260 yet. Am I going to lose my interview appointment? No, you don't lose your opportunity. When you submit your DS260 late, it doesn't. Your number will have been passed, but it doesn't matter because once you do submit your DS260 and once it's processed, you will then be scheduled at some later point, right? Now, because of your very low case number, and you've got a very nice low case number there, when you are scheduled, in the month that you're scheduled, you will be at the front of that queue for that particular month. Now, if you watch my beads video, you'll see that means you will stay behind higher case numbers that were scheduled in previous months before you. they will remain in front of you in the queue. Okay. And your case simply goes behind those, but will be at the beginning of any other case numbers scheduled in your same month once you're scheduled. Okay, so you get scheduled later. It's fine. It's not a problem. But are you deliberately trying to slow up your interview for some reason? There are some legitimate reasons why you might do that. Otherwise, you should probably submit your DS-260. Okay. How are you doing, sir? I have 80K case number for DV26. Can it be scheduled for interview? Maybe. We don't know yet. We don't know what the numbers are looking like. 2025 AF65K. Yeah, there's a good possibility for the visa bulletin to exceed 65K. I've explained why in this video. I would like a bit more information on the financial reality of migration. I'm 2026 SA 700. It's a great question, Theon. I've got a couple of videos that talk about that talk about how to sort of settle in America. Right? It is very hard. Right? There's no doubt about it. I spoke with someone just the other day, and they described some friends of theirs that came to America, DV lottery winners, and after a year they moved back home because they found it too difficult. Right? So let me say a few things. It's expensive to come here to start with. It's definitely expensive, right? But you very soon start earning American wages, right? And so the expenses start to sort of normalize and make sense. But you're likely to take a step back in your career. Like, if you were at a manager or a director level, let's say, in some sort of job in your home country, you don't have the track record in America, and you might have to go back down the ladder a little bit, and you go backwards in your career, only to sort of go forwards again later if you're good enough, right? So some people find they go backwards, and I'm thinking of a dear friend who did exactly that from South Africa, and this gentleman, went backwards in his career for a while. He had been a fairly senior director level. He came over to America, started off with a managerial level job, and has risen back up and now exceeded the level that he'd been in the previous job. And so you have to be a bit humble and expect that you're going to go backwards before you go forwards. You're also going to have a lot of expenses because you're setting up a home in America, whereas you're probably not going to bring everything that you had from the homeland. You're going to have difficulties such as understanding the medical system and how to enroll the kids in the school and just getting used to all of that and getting a driving license. And there's lots of hassles in the first year or so that make it very difficult, both financially and in other ways, to settle here. It's hard, right? I've been through it. It is very hard, no doubt about it. You have to be aware of that and aware that you're going to have to battle for a little while. I think it's probably easiest for people who have kids, because if you know you're coming to take on a battle and it's going to be harder than you imagined, let's say, you look at your kids and you realize they're going to have a better life than they would have had because you're living in a great country, and the battle therefore is worthwhile, and some discomfort and some short-term pain, etc., is worthwhile. And America is still a place of opportunity. You can gain more wealth here than any other place in the world. You can achieve amazing things. I heard a ridiculous stat the other day. To be in the top 1% of all of the world, the 7 billion people, the top 1% financially, the wage necessary to be in the top 1% is $35,000 a year. That's a ridiculously small wage. That's almost nowhere in America. I mean, that's poverty line in America. In other words, if you're above the poverty line in America, you're in a better financial position than 99% of the rest of the world. It's just a staggering statistic in a sense. Now, that's not to say that there are not wealthy people in India or China or South Africa or wherever else. But it's just a sort of a bit of a silly stat in a way, but it does show you the potential of living in America. It's financially, you're asking about financially. it is amazing here, right? So Ruth says, hi Simon, if you had previous student visa refusal, does it affect the grant of a DV lottery? Good question, Ruth. Non-immigrant visas typically have a 214B refusal as the most likely form of refusal. And that refusal, the most common sort of refusal for a non-immigrant visa, is on the basis that the consular officer thinks that you're going to overstay your visa, that you have immigrant intent, you have intentions to try and become a permanent resident of the USA, stay in the USA, right? And that's the biggest reason to get refused for non-immigrant visas. 214B is not a refusal type that matters in DV lottery, because you obviously are coming with immigrant intent in DV lottery. It's proof, frankly, that they were right about the concern earlier. No, the previous refusal, if it was for 214B, which it probably was, most likely was, won't affect your DV lottery process at all. Now, if you were refused for your previous visa on some other grounds that still is an impact to a DV lottery immigrant case, then yeah, maybe that could be a problem, but it's unlikely, right? Okay, FC Barcelona TV. 57K Cameroon, please. How is this embassy situation? Do you think they can reach my case number? Have a look at the data, please. Please have a look at that. Felix, is the denaturalization going to happen? Does it negate the need for DV and finally becoming naturalized citizen? Okay. There's some talk about this. Our lunatic government and representatives of the lunatic government have started talking about denaturalization. Denaturalization is a process of taking the citizenship away from someone who is previously naturalized in America, such as me, for whatever reason. Right now, the nuances in the for whatever reason. They can't just strip someone of citizenship on a whim. They can strip someone of their citizenship if that person lied or committed fraud, willful fraud in the naturalization process or any part of the immigration journey leading up to that. So let's say they decided they were fed up with me calling Trump an idiot, and he is, right? So they wanted to take away my citizenship. How would they do that? They would either look at my citizenship application and say that I willfully misrepresented some information on there, or in my green card process, I misrepresented some information in there willfully, right? This is why I tell some of you to make sure that you fill out the DS-260 completely. You don't want to misrepresent or underrepresent any of the information that they ask for. If they ask you for your social media and you don't give social media, I'm not saying that that will lead to a denaturalization process down the road, but why would you hide information like that, right? So it's not a wise thing to do. You should be very transparent and honest, and make sure you follow all the rules. Because if you fraudulently or by misrepresentation obtain your green card and then later naturalize, then yeah, you've created a path for them to actually denaturalize you. Now, having said that, in the last 20 years, I think they've denaturalized roughly on average about 10 people a year. It's incredibly rare. And no matter how much Trump likes to talk about, being a big bad man and all this bullshit, he's got no freaking idea. And the people that work for him don't have any idea. So we're not suddenly going to see thousands and thousands of denaturalization cases. The bar to denaturalize someone is thankfully pretty high. And you've got a whole set of, if you're a citizen in America, you've got a whole set of, rights given you so that you can fight that process. You're going to go in front of an immigration judge. You're going to be represented by an attorney. You're going to have appeals, and the whole thing will take years. And frankly, why is the government going to do that unless they really, really hate you, or they really, really want to make some sort of thing like Trump might try and denaturalize Elon Musk or something? But then why are they going to come gunning for me? I don't know. It's very unlikely that any of you will ever hear anything to do with denaturalization. So, don't worry about it. It's the typical thing. There's a lot of talk and bravado from this administration, not a lot of action, and not a lot of common sense, frankly. Okay. Guz, I think we've already talked to Tony Sando rather. Hi Brett, please help me. I'm 52k and I will be current next week, but my worry is I have a family of 6 and my bank statement is not very good. Please, can you advise me? Okay, so if I were you, let's say you get your interview. Between your interview, your 2NL and the interview, you should figure out how you're going to present your case, financially speaking. If you don't have very much of savings in your own bank account, what story are you going to tell the consular officer about if they ask about your finances? What you should do is have an I-134, which is an affidavit of support from an American citizen or American permanent resident who is willing to support you financially. There's no commitment on them. They're not held to anything legally, but it is a sign to the consular officer that you've got someone in America that cares for you and wants to help you through your process. But also, I would say there was this wise question asked earlier about finances. How are you going to afford moving to America? Right? You're going to be paying $330 for each of the interviews. You're going to be paying medicals. That can be expensive. You're going to pay $220 for each of the people that you bring, right? So you've got a family of 6. So you're going to be spending at least $3,000 on all of the immigration process, probably nearer $4,000 or $5,000. You're going to be spending, what, $1,000 each for a flight? So that's another $6,000. You're going to need somewhere to stay, right? How are you going to live, right? How quickly are you going to be able to get a job to support the family? Probably, if you're the main applicant, the principal applicant, you might want to go ahead of the family, for example, get a job, live as cheaply as possible, start saving money, and then pay for the flights and to bring the family over before the 6 months. But, so you need to have some sort of plan like that, right? You need to have some money. And I know it's not easy. I get it. And I get people all the time asking for various forms of help. But, I can't help everyone. I can't, I can't literally, sort of pay for people's tickets and that sort of thing. It's just, there's too many people I would like to help, frankly. So what do you do? But, you got to put some thought into it. Okay. Bonko. I had case number 76K for 2024 lottery, and I was in so much panic at the time. Really feel bad for the winners this year. Yeah. Is the ban effective for the entire Trump administration? You're asking, will it be in place for the remaining 3.5 years of the administration? I don't know. Trump doesn't discuss things with me. It's partly because I say some nasty things about him. But yeah, he doesn't call me anymore and talk about what he's thinking. And Stephen Miller, he's never been very keen on me for some reason. It's because he's a racist and I'm not. So we don't see eye to eye on things. The ban and restrictions have 90 days period, after which some countries will be removed from the list, while others included. There are some of us who will be having interviews in September. Okay, you're letting your little brain just make up stuff, right? You say 90-day period. There is a review period every 90 days. It does not say some countries will be removed from the list and others included. It doesn't say that. Okay, it's not like a rotating thing. Some countries might be removed from the list, but there's no evidence to suggest that that's true. You're just making that up. So, anyway, let's see. Any update on the UK lawsuit? I thought about sending an email out to people that had given me their emails on the form about this. There isn't really an update. The papers have been served. We've sued Trump, Noem, Rubio, and Director McIgnol of KCC. those papers have been served. We have made the case, put all the information out there in the complaint. The government now have a period of time to respond to the complaint. That period of time will end on August 15th. Okay, so between now and August 15th, probably very close to August 15th, the government will respond to our complaint. It's going to be immediately obvious from their response that they have not got a leg to stand on, that they have screwed up in the way that I know they've screwed up. And so, they're not going to, it's not going to be a normal lawsuit where we say, hey, you've been bad, you've been naughty. And they say, no, we haven't. We're saying, hey, you've been bad, you've been naughty. And they're going to come back and say, yeah, you're right. Okay. That's the only thing they can say. Now, what happens next? Next, we have to talk about the remedies, etc., and we have to try and negotiate a situation where we have some sort of remedy that suits everybody, right? And it can't suit everybody truly. I mean, there's going to be someone unhappy. Partly one of the things that's going to be a problem is the timeline, right? For DV 2025 applicants, I know we're probably going to be able to fast track some people through the system, but we're going to be short of time. By the end of August and beginning of September, we might be sort of informing some people that they actually were winners, and that they can come for interview and they can submit their DS-260, but it's going to be a rush, right? There's much more chance for the DV-26 winners. There will be some DV-26 winners created by this lawsuit, right? Some UK ones. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the timeline. Yeah, I sort of naively said to Curtis, oh, but since it's so easy for them to admit that they've done wrong and correct it, couldn't they come back faster than the August 15th deadline? And he kind of laughed at me, and sort of patted me on the head and said, sweet naive boy, they don't do that, right? Apparently they won't come back early, which is unfortunate because it is obvious. I tried to contact McInnoll, the director of KCC, before I filed the lawsuit. I also tried to do a Freedom of Information Act filing to try and get the information that I knew. I've been trying to alert them about this, right? I've played fair with the government, and now had to sue them at considerable expense, some of which I'm going to bear myself, right? And it's not going to benefit me in any way, but is the right thing to do. So I highly appreciate all of those that have supported the lawsuit through the GoFundMe. Somebody who has already helped financially and also in the background with a bit of legal help contacted me the other day and wanted to see the pleading, the complaint. And in discussion with him, I pointed out that what I do hope and expect is that, let's say we create a bunch of DV-26 winners, I would hope those people would sort of turn around and say, yeah, okay, Simon probably has lost, a few $1,000s for this lawsuit that got me my chance. I should probably send him a drink, as we would say in the UK. I should send him some sort of donation to offset those charges. But, I can't force that on anyone, obviously. And so, this is still the right thing to do. But so if it ends up costing me a big amount of money, okay, fine. But at least it was the right thing to do. Okay, so that's where we're at, Vine Central. I don't think there's any new information in there. I will, if I get any information, I will certainly create a video about it or publish it on my blog, and perhaps email to the group of people that I know of. Okay. Eddie says, a review of the ban and restrictions is on 9th of September, and we are praying and trusting God that our country, Sierra Leone, will be removed by September 9th when the 90-day period ends on September 9th. I don't think that will happen, but good luck with that. Hi, Britt. I got married in March and added my wife on application. She also became scheduled in May for DV-26. Does that make our marriage more genuine in the eyes of the consul? Yeah, the fact that you married before, like in between her getting into the, actually submitting her entry into the DV lottery, and before she found out a winner, the fact that you got married in that period of time is slightly better than getting married after she found out she was a winner, right? So yes, it's slightly more genuine. But It doesn't mean that people who marry, or rather who find out they're winners, it doesn't mean those people shouldn't marry. They absolutely should marry if they are in a genuine relationship. They should marry. They should get on with it, and take advantage of the lottery win. Okay. Hey Simon, a DV26 selectee and my DS260 is already processed. Do you think it's normal for it to be early? My case number is AF4K. Not at all unusual. Plenty of people have been processed already, right? I mean, if you entered your documents in the first couple of days, your DS260, then yeah, it's not at all unusual. Okay. Any DV lottery winners in the chat? Are you serious? Lots of DV lottery winners in the chat. Yeah, not scheduled. I mean selected. Sorry, says Lasher. I don't know what that means. What is happening in Nairobi, Mr. Simon? I don't know. I don't know what the hell's been going on there. I've tried to shake the trees a little bit, but there's nothing. There's nothing that we know or can do at this point. It's just a matter of watching, seeing, hoping they do the right thing. Roberto, the wait is over. Next week we will find out what fate has in store for us. Yes, absolutely, Roberto. I mean, I think you're pretty confident, right? We're just making sure we want to get to that sort of 30 number at least, right? So fingers crossed, Roberto. It's going to be a good week, I think. Positive thoughts, right? I'm a 2026 winner. Do you think they will accept a special letter from UNHCR indicating that I'm minority under threat and issue the winner? Okay. So you're an Iranian, but you're a minority and you're under persecution. Maybe that is one of the possible exceptions. Whether you've got the appropriate evidence or not for that, I don't know. Okay, you have to try. Those people who are lost in AF the table, I think it's because of the travel ban. No, Mehdi, I've explained. It's not because of the travel ban. So try and pay attention. It's what I've done is I've looked at the 2NL date, okay, and worked out that people had interviews prior to where we currently are, right? So I know that they are that they're no-shows. Anyway, I don't just make this stuff up as I go along, right? I've been doing this a few years. If you have an idea that isn't what I say, then your idea is probably incorrect. Mehdi, that's the reality. Okay, Nairobi still forgot about us. 2025, yeah. Abu Dhabi is not accepting transfers. Yeah, that's probably true. Although by transfers, you're using the wrong term there. Abu Dhabi would accept a transfer, but a transfer is when you've been scheduled in one embassy and you then want to move to another embassy, and that's not what you're asking them for. You're asking them to have your case reassigned to them prior to it being scheduled for interview somewhere else, and they've been turning down those sort of requests. Okay, so they can take in TV for the rest. No, they take. I don't know what that means. Let's see. Hi Simon. In the DS260, I'll be including all of my social media handles. Good, including a few I had unintentionally left out of the previous DS160, although my visa was granted. Do you think that past omission is likely to come up in the interview? No, I don't think it's a problem at all. Just be as honest and transparent as you can in the DV lottery one. Okay. Do you think there's a chance of visa exhaustion this year? Absolutely not. If you were listening to the beginning of the today's session, I've explained in quite a bit of detail how it's basically impossible. They would have to. What they just did for August interviews was scheduled just under 2,500 interviews. In order to exhaust the visas, they would have to schedule something like double that for the final month. Probably about 5,000 interviews, maybe more. 5,000, probably more than that. They can't exhaust the number of visas. And the travel ban will have an impact on those numbers for sure. But even without those, they're massively off target. they've really, really messed things up. Brent Simon, remember me. I'm successfully in the US, 26K from Ghana. Thank you so much. El Rico, congratulations. Welcome to America. Nice to see some Ghanaians make it. So, yeah. Good to hear from you. Very much so. Khalid, I hope my message will reach you. Do you think that interview attorney will accept special letter? Oh, you've already asked that, Khalid. Okay. Hi, Simon, Nairobi, Kenya. We have already given up. What's your advice for DV26 selectees before they submit the DS260 so that they can be scheduled for interview? Good question. Okay, how would you play that? Now, we don't know how the year is going to finish up in Nairobi. We don't know why they stopped interviewing. They were a really good embassy last year. For the last 2 or 3 years, they've been a good embassy, right? And then this year, they stopped interviewing. They took 421 cases in, I think, November, and they've taken nothing since. They might take some cases for November. We don't know. For September, rather. We don't know. So if you're a low case number in Africa and you're in and you're destined to be in Nairobi, you might want to think about that. If you have some other address in some other country where you have connections there, you have family there, you can go and stay there, etc., you might want to submit your DS260 with that address. You might want to already be positioning yourself to get an interview somewhere else other than Nairobi. That's only for very low case numbers. The problem is that by the time we get information on number of interviews and that sort of thing, it's going to be January, basically. And by that time, a number of people will be locked into Nairobi already. They're already going to be assigned to Nairobi. And if Nairobi have another bad year, it's going to be a problem. Okay, so we get very little information during the beginning of the year and until January the 1st, when we get all the information, we get all the SEAC data, we know exactly what's gone on at that point, and from that point onwards. So if you've got a very low case number that will become current before January the 1st, then yes, you probably want to think about where you want to interview and how you can engineer that. And the best way to be assigned to a different embassy is to have a different address in a different country. Okay, I'm going to just look for a couple more interesting questions here. Surajan came to say hi, quite occupied nowadays. That's good. Hello, Brett. I'm a DV winner 2025. My interview is in Cotonou. I'm 55K. Do you think I'll have a chance? You might. Olivia, yes, you might. Vadim, how you doing again? 31K Vienna. Now a little worried about the current capacity to handle 10K cases in September. Do you think I will try moving to Stockholm? Stop moving, Vadim, for Christ's sake. You're all over the place. Like you're constantly thinking. I get it. I understand why, but calm down, right? You might move to Stockholm and then, and maybe that wouldn't work out, right? Vienna's pretty good. You've given yourself a chance there. Calm down and see what happens, right? The whole point about some of those smaller embassies, of which Vienna is one, is that they've got true ability to go to fairly high numbers. 31K won't be a huge stretch. If you look at DV24, let me do something here. Let me show you something. Right, in, where are we? In DV24, I think. Let's have a look at DV24 data for a minute. And let's just make sure we got the full year. I'd slid this back. Right, okay. So if we go and have a look at EU for DV24, you can see that there were some cases, very, very few cases, but some cases scheduled right up to 50,000, right? Right up to this point. That's the highest number. So they went current with this stupid, the last visa bulletin was a stupidly high number for EU. Now, if we look at Vienna, Australia, and we look at all the cases that they took, right? Actually, if we have a look here, where are we? Okay, Vienna, right. So, and we have a look at what they took. You can see that they took an African case at 122,000. They took a another African case there. Let me just switch this on to just EU. So their highest case number was 49, just over 49,000. In other words, they had a case at 50,000, almost 50,000. They had a few cases in between, etc. When that final visa bulletin happened in in EU, Vienna somehow managed to schedule people all the way to the top number. So you're worried about the 10,000? Forget it. It's not a problem. Okay. Oh Christ! I've not been showing this. This is what I was trying to show. This is Vienna and EU, and let me make that bigger. Crumbs. Toggle menu. Yeah. Scroll back down and I'll show you that. Yeah. So you can see, 49 to 50,000 in Vienna. Okay. There are several embassies, smaller embassies in Europe that have the ability to do this. You can see in Vienna, they were starting off, they have very few cases for whatever reason, very few cases. Then in the middle of the number range, they got a bunch of cases. People moving to Vienna, do you think? And then the final visa bulletin came out. It was a huge number, and it went from 30 to 50,000. It was a 20,000 number range jump, and sure enough, they took people right up to the highest number. So you don't have a problem. Okay, relax, Vadim. Some of you go a little bit crazy with trying to move to whichever is the embassy de jour, and you end up messing yourselves up. You just make a sensible decision and then wait, and then you've rolled the dice, right? Just relax. Thank you so much for analyzing. I have a question. What's the point of having in the lottery more than 40,000 case numbers in the EU? Why are they doing that? That's not a possibility, I guess. Well, it's the same question. Why do they invite or select over 130,000 people? Right? Why do they have 131,060 selectees in DV 2026 or 25? DV 25, and there's only 52,000 visas available. Why do they overselect? Why do they have too many people in Europe? Why too many people in Africa, and so on? Well, they don't know what's going to happen, right? There is the same reason you have a soccer game. I'll call it football, European football. And you have your team, and then you have some reserves. You have a reserve bench. You don't know what's going to happen. Someone could get injured. Somebody could be refused at their interview. It's the same thing, right? So people can get travel banned. They don't know what's going to happen, so they overselect. What tends to drive the process, I believe, is Africa. Africa causes some funny shit to go on because it doesn't seem to matter how many people you invite. In Africa, they don't seem to be able to get to the right number. They can't meet the quota for whatever reason, and so Africa drives the numbers up, and they do the same thing for Europe and Asia and so on. So they just have a lot of extra people, and you can instantly see once we have the selectee numbers, you can instantly see that mathematically those people shouldn't get a chance. But some weird shit goes on. Weird shit happened last year. The numbers at 50,000 were ridiculous, nonsense numbers. And nevertheless, some people got interviews, right? So, and I think weird shit will happen again in DV25, right? So we'll see. Do you happen to know if there has been an increase in available places in Italy? No idea. Any lawsuit for people affected by the travel ban? I think you already asked. I think you already answered. Okay. Could they restore back the DV lottery deleted fees? Not in the big, beautiful bill, if that's what you're talking about. No, that's already been signed. The law has been signed into place, as is with those provisions deleted. Okay. So could they have another bill that tries to put those fees in place, yeah, absolutely, they could try and do that. But for that bill, they would need 60 votes to pass that measure in the Senate, and they're not going to get that. So, it's not likely to come back. Okay. Which month the DV26 VB going to start? The first visa bulletin for DV26 will be the one published in August. Okay. And in either the July one, the one that's published in July, or the one that's published in August, we'll have a listing of the number of selectees per country. So fingers crossed to see that. Okay. Case number is AF28K in Abu Dhabi Embassy. Is there a chance? I don't know. I don't know what Abu Dhabi are going to do. You have to wait and see, I'm afraid. Kigali, do you think? Kigali. Case number AF25, do you think I should consider transferring embassies, or it's too early to decide based on how Kigali is performing in DV25? Yeah, it's too early. You're not going to be current before January 1, so you've got time to wait, and you should be fine to wait and see whether you need to transfer or not. Okay. Okay. Any interesting questions here? Yusuf, in your opinion, what is the future of DV program? Will it be paid or will it be modified? It won't be paid. I don't think there'll be a paid version of this. That whole idea was just stupid. Just stupid Trump stupidity. Stupid. And Republican stupidity. It's a stupid idea. It was a stupid idea in the beginning, and it still is stupid. Did I say the word stupid enough? I think I probably did. What will it be modified? This is a sort of an interesting question. If there were such a thing as immigration reform, then I think that DV lottery could probably be ended in a true immigration reform bill. But for an immigration reform bill to actually be voted on and passed, it would have to address a number of things. It's very difficult to get consensus. We're a deeply divided country politically at the moment. It doesn't feel like this country at this time can get both sides of government on the same page about something like immigration, for example. There should be some changes made to our immigration laws. They're out of date. They're not serving us well. And the DV lottery is probably not the most efficient way we can do some of this extra immigration. But DV lottery is a small part. Remember, in any given year, there's over 1 million immigrants to the USA, and only 5% of those come from DV lottery, right? Roughly speaking, about 50,000 out of over 1 million. DV lottery we think of as being very important, but it's not very important in the big picture. And immigration reform to handle asylum, refugees, family-based cases, immigration for business reasons, for work, all of those things need to be improved. Okay, so we do need some reform of our immigration laws and processes for sure. And if such a thing were to be agreed by the government, in Congress, it would probably be at the expense of DV lottery. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Okay, so that's my position. Okay. My son, this is a good question. Amila, my son is studying in Europe, so is it possible for him to face the interview from there? We are in Sri Lanka. Technically, that is possible. It's usually a bad idea if you've got a high case number, but if you've got a low case number, it's not such a bad idea. Basically, you would go through the interview and you arrange for an interview to happen after your interview at the remote embassy, so for your son. And so you have to arrange everything, and that's where the risk lies. You're trying to contact the embassy and arrange an interview. It's not a good idea to try and do that if your case number is high, because you're likely to mess it up. It's much better for him to get on a plane and come to interview with you. This is a once in a lifetime thing. Find a way to make it happen. he can come for a weekend, a long weekend if he has to, do something radical like that. But if you've got a low case number and you have time to spend, arranging this, then yeah, that's possible. It is a possible thing. Do we need to send a scanned copy of the passport's biographic data page to the Kentucky Consular Center? No, you don't. They don't ask for that. I don't know why you're asking about that, really. It's not in the instructions anymore. Is it true I lost my case? I don't have all the docs ready for the month of interview. Is it true I lost my case if I don't have all my docs ready? No. If you're not ready for your interview, you go to your interview anyway. And if you're missing a document, you follow up with that after the interview, and you're placed on 221G, which is a temporary refusal until you provide that missing document. Okay, so no, you haven't lost your case. It's fine. You still attend your interview on time. Okay. Okay. Bula Simon, prediction for Oceania final cutoff. I don't know. Case number is OC17. You haven't told me which year. I think OC17 has always been pretty safe. So, fingers crossed for you. Talked about that one already. Okay. One last question, and let me see if I can find. Yeah, let's talk about this one. We'll talk about the Irish, the luck of the Irish. Hi, Simon. Case number 37K, EU from Dublin. Hasn't been much mention of the Irish because it's so few selectees. But what do you think of the chances to get chosen for interview? Appreciate the help. The chosen for interview bit, it depends on your case number. You haven't told me the year, so I don't know whether we're talking DV25 or DV26. That's a bit of a problem. I don't know what to say to you. For DV25, it's obviously risky, but possible. For DV26, I have no idea. Okay, whether we're going to get to EU 37K or not. It's quite risky in DV25. Okay. Okay, one more question here because this is a good one. Hi, Simon. How long does it take to adjust your status from F1 visa to immigrant status as a derivative applicant in the States if the main applicant has been granted the DV visa abroad? That is possible. It's complex. How long does it take? Adjustment of status for DV reasons is normally pretty quick, but yours is a slightly unusual DV case because you're doing it after a case abroad. It's quite tricky. I personally would fly to be with the family to interview there. I would not try and take this process, particularly if you've got a high case number. I wouldn't bother with this process with a high case number. So how long does it take? It can take 3 or 4 months, but it's tricky. It could go either way. What sometimes is more usual is follow to join, where a principal applicant goes through the adjustment status process in the USA, and the family members and he or she files an I-824, which is the form for follow to join, to have people abroad, the family members interview abroad and then join in the USA. That's more likely. That process, is pretty fast, can be very fast in some cases, but you're doing the reverse of that, right? And so it's a bit unusual, a bit weird, and because it's a bit weird, it might take longer. Okay. All right, everybody. That will be the last question for today. I hope this has been interesting to you. I hope it's been useful. If there's any questions that I haven't managed to get to today that you would still like to ask, go ahead and ask me at britsimonsays.com, britsimonsays.com. You can ask the question there and I will answer it personally. Fingers crossed for this week. We should see the visa bulletin. The visa bulletin is published every month between the 8th and the 15th, roughly speaking. So from Tuesday and for the remainder of this week, it's a possibility, and perhaps the week after that. But I'm hopeful we get a visa bulletin this coming week. Okay, and for any of you that still have, if you're in a position where you want to move your case, you need to get off your ass and do that like now. Okay. If you want to unlock your case so that you can change your address and get assigned to a different embassy, your last chance to do that is basically today and tomorrow. Okay. So get off your ass and do that. Stop thinking about it or procrastinating. Once you become stage 4, which is AV status, or in the AV queue for a particular embassy, that's when your DS-260 is processed and your case number is current. And if you write to KCC, they say things like you're current for interview processing, right? That is stage 4. Once you're in stage 4, it's very, very difficult to reassign your embassy from that point forward. Very difficult indeed. KCC don't want to unlock your DS-260 for any reason. They don't want to make any changes to your case. It's very difficult. Okay, needs pretty much a miracle to change your interview location at that point. So if you're not current yet, but you think you're about to get current, and you think your embassy isn't going to be able to schedule you because they're backlogged, or they're just not taking cases or whatever, then today is your last chance to write to KCC, unlock your DS-260, and change your address to another country where you've got better chance of being interviewed. Okay, I mean it. This is your last chance. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining today. Have a good day. Bye-bye.